You're listening to The Rich Life Revolution with me, Michelle Cooper. My mission is to empower you to step into your next level of wealthy. You'll hear all the deets, a little bit of inspiration, and real life takeaways so that you can create your own rich life revolution. Let's dig in. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Rich Life Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Cooper, and I am so excited to share with you episode 30, an interview with Jackie McDonald, where we are diving into what it means to release to receive, how you can manifest through tapping EFT for those of you who are in the know. So just a reminder, before we dive into this episode, I would love for you to share this podcast with your world. Like it, subscribe to it, leave us comments, share it with your bestie. Let's create a ripple effect of impact and have more people stepping into their rich life revolution. So today I'm bringing you one of my favorite people in the world, the one, the only, Jackie McDonald. We have known each other for many years now. And in my conversation with her today, we dig into the intersection between her specialized tapping, not your average EFT, and entrepreneurship. Jackie McDonald is the founder of EFT Tapping School. She's the host of the Unconventional Woman podcast and a mama. She teaches people how to release and receive with a groundbreaking somatic technique called EFT tapping. Jackie started as a single mom and built a six-figure business, helping others feel better faster using EFT. Her mission is to get tapping into the hands, hearts, and homes of people worldwide. Jackie truly lives the business she has built and brings her inspiringly honest and practical approach to meditation, manifestation, and living her richest life. So let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right into this episode and learn all about Jackie and EFT. Hey, Jackie, how are you?
Hey, thanks for having me.
So just as background for everybody that's listening, Jackie is one of my greatest friends. We met, I think, 2015 or maybe 16. We've been on this crazy entrepreneurial roller coaster together, supporting each other along the way, right? There's times where I've called up Jackie and said, I need you. And there's times where she's called me and said, I need you. And then there's times where we just get together and laugh our heads off because it's ridiculous. And there's been lots of changes in our personal lives too, right?
My gosh, you're so right. I mean, when I think about how much has changed in the past 7-8 years, you are one of the only people that has been there, steady, consistent. We've been there for each other. I mean, I was like a baby when you met me. I was so young.
I know. In fact, I will share with everybody a little secret. When I met Jackie, so we were in a speakers mastermindy thing, right? Learning how to speak from stage. And we had this weekend where we recorded a video and had all these photos done and stuff. And so we all kind of met each other online, and then we were in person together for a weekend. And when I saw Jackie, at that point, I was new to Gabby Bernstein, and she was like my on a pedestal kind of thing. And I met Jackie, and I'm like, oh my God, you're like my local Gabby Bernstein. Do you remember that?
I remember it. It was like such a compliment. I was like, wow, because you know how you don't see yourself in the way that other people see you. I was like, I'll take that. Thank you.
Totally. Yeah. And instantly a fan, and just love our relationship and our friendship. And I know that there's been like really crazy ups and downs, like in no joke, right? Like life got real fast for both of us at different times, right?
I mean, health challenges. We were just talking before this, business challenges. I mean, my 30th birthday, you were there, right? And I didn't have very many people there. It's just so cool to see all these milestones. And I mean, maybe that's what we bring people in on today, is like a bit of the real talk that happens when you're building big businesses, when you have a mission to help a lot of people. It does get really real sometimes. There's great moments where it's like the best thing ever, and then like WTF moments. Like, what do I do next?
I feel like there's more WTF moments than there are great moments. So like
I'm with you on that. I agree.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's just where I'm at, but yeah. So can you just to fill everybody in, tell them about you, what you do, all that jazz.
Yeah, so I am the founder of something called EFT Tapping School. And tapping is a form of somatic therapy that is literally at your fingertips. So you're tapping on acupuncture points in the face and body while repeating statements and eventually getting into a state of affirmation. And I found tapping, I always say tapping found me at my worst and brought me to my best. It found me when I had just had a new baby when I was 19 years old. And I went through a really traumatic few months within the birth of my daughter. So we had a lot of loss and funerals that we had to attend in a few months after she was born. And at that time, I didn't know what fight or flight in my nervous system meant. I just knew that whatever was happening to my body wasn't normal. And I was desperate to get back to where I was and feel better. And that's when tapping came into my life. So EFT tapping stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. It's known as a somatic form of therapy because you're combining the body and the mind. And I had my first tapping session, and I realized that a lot of the physical symptoms I was experiencing in my body were connected to the things that were going on emotionally. And after that first session, I grieved, I cried, I released a whole ton of stuff. I felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders and it had released. And then I started to feel better. You know, I could sleep normally. I could, and for me, it was also starting to attract things into my life to support my healing. So attracting the right naturopath. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to get certified. So I got certified and built a business online where I now work with women all over the world, teaching them tapping and how to create their own businesses, emotional freedom and financial freedom with EFT.
Amazing. And okay, I'm going to share the realness of my story with tapping. I'm like, yay, that's great for you, Jackie. Yeah, I get it, but not for me. I think because a lot of the people I had seen or experienced tapping with focused on the trauma, like the old kind of story, right? And it was my own journey. I just didn't want to keep going back there. I realized that we have to, but at the very beginning of getting to know you, I was like, yeah. But what I loved about you was the whole combination of tapping with manifestation. I was like, oh, I can totally get in on that. And so that kind of kept me along for the ride. And then I think when I was ready to deal with that past, it's like timing comes at your own time, right? When I was ready, it was such a benefit. Like I can't stress enough the benefit of this for me. I was just, I was at a point where I had huge awareness around, my nervous system and how I had been operating and my beliefs, but my nervous system was stuck. My body had a chemical addiction to adrenaline and cortisol, and my nervous system was stuck at this like very high level. So that even though I was doing some things that some people would say would be relaxing, it was not relaxing. It was like the opposite. And that's what I called you. And I'm like, okay, clearly I need some help here.
Yeah, weren't you in like a yoga session or something one day and you felt like you were having a panic attack or a heart attack?
Yeah, literally, I'm in Savasana and lying there, we're relaxing. It's a relaxation yoga class, and it's dark and it's warm and there's candles, and we're like just breathing. And I start having like a panic attack. My blood pressure goes up because I can feel the blood in my brain and my eyeballs. And I'm like, what is happening right now? And I had to leave the room because I felt like I was going to start screaming or something. I was going to ruin it for everybody else. And luckily, I left the room and was really upset. However, one of your students was an instructor at that studio. And she was like, what is wrong? Like, what's going on? And I was like, I don't actually know what's going on right now. All I know is I can't be in that room. And she was like, you need to call Jackie. And I'm like, okay. I called you from the parking lot. I'm like, oh my God, I need some help.
And that's where, like, my philosophy is to help women release so that they can receive. Because as you mentioned, tapping traditionally is a tool to help people heal from PTSD and trauma. It's phenomenal for things like addiction and chronic pain and all sorts of really intense things. Like, it has phenomenal results. But I found that, yes, it worked for that. And also, like I mentioned in my story, it started to bring good things into my life. It started to help me realize when I have the power to process my emotions effectively, and my emotions will lead me to the beliefs underneath this that are sitting underneath the surface. I can start to program my life and program my subconscious brain to draw in what I want using EFT. And so that's what I started doing, is playing with it. I would just make a wish list of things that I wanted to have happen, and I would tap on them and they'd start happening. And so when you came in, it was the moment where you needed to be disrupted, right? Like, your nervous system was jacked up. You were in a fight or flight state, and trying to do something like yoga was too big of a leap for your body. It was like, being quiet is making me more anxious. And so with tapping, we have the ability to have the same side effects of soothing the nervous system, but we could tap and talk it through, right? So you're like, even though I want to be relaxed, right now I'm super stressed and anxious, and I love and accept myself anyway. And it was so beautiful to watch the journey you went on. We did do some deeper healing work, and now you've reemerged into this healthier human in so many different ways. Is really an honor to walk with you in that.
Yeah, yeah, so, so phenomenal. So, when you think about your business, right? Like you and I, we've been in business for quite a while. We're not new to it's not our first rodeo kind of thing. We've both had crazy success and crazy disappointment.
That's the truth. Yep.
And crazy things have happened. Like, I think about some of the stuff that's happened to both of us, and it's like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, I don't even understand this. As a business owner, what do you think is like the most challenging thing to deal with as an entrepreneur?
Well, I mean, they don't call it the entrepreneur roller coaster for nothing. I think releasing disappointment when things don't go according to plan. I think that's been one of the things that, well, tapping has helped me with. Is I've always been a pretty spontaneous person. I have an idea, I make a move, I act on it. I don't let perfectionism stop me. And I've been trying to be more, in the past 2 years, more disciplined in, like, having a plan and, doing a proper launch and doing all these things. And one of the hardest things for me is putting in all that work, hiring the team, checking the boxes, to then have something flop, like have the launch not work out the way you thought, or have the Facebook ad not work out the way you thought. So for me, it's been really learning to release my attachment to external things, bringing me satisfaction and joy, and understanding it's all in who I'm becoming and building this thing was what matters the most.
Yeah, I would totally agree, right? It's the being, not the doing. And just like you, you can be this way too. Like, I can outdo anybody. I can work if I need to work. And that's been my habit to break. That's my go-to. And recently, as I said to you, it's like, okay, I'm not going to do anything right now. I'm just going to let go. I'm going to surrender. I'm going to see what happens because I actually can't do anything. And I was blown away that, okay, it didn't necessarily improve the situation, but actually it didn't make it any worse either.
And your sanity in it is, way better. That's like a perfect example of release to receive. Like, you released, your nervous system started to regulate, and then you start to receive the guidance or the answers or the next steps.
Yeah. So, so, so important. And, the whole attachment to the outcome. I think that symbol to me when I'm working with clients and for myself, when I'm attached to the external outcome as a meaning, it's creating a meaning. Like, say, a launch is, I want to reach, let's say, $500,000 in a launch, and I don't. Well, that's just an external outcome. And what's the meaning that I create from that internally about myself? Because it's not the external thing, it's the internal thing that is the thing to deal with, right?
It reminds me of the quote that nothing has any meaning beyond the meaning we give it. And business is like the ultimate. Like, what are you making this experience mean right now? That you're a failure, that you did it wrong, that you didn't hire the right person? Or are you making it mean, oh, like I'm being built right now? Like my character is being tested. I'm having to innovate. I'm having to be creative and pivot. It's so tempting to go into that inner critic.
Totally, right? And then, okay, so you and I were both fan of James Wedmore, and I always remember him saying somewhere in his podcast, like, it's really important to look at who we're being and what that being is actually doing, and then the meaning that we're creating from that. Good, bad, ugly, doesn't matter, because we can all go down this is a failure, I'm a piece of crap, I'm a loser, I did this crappy thing. But at the same time, people go down the route of like, this was a success, I'm the most awesome thing in the world, like, look at me, I'm killing it. And I've seen equal fall from graces, like significant fall from graces of people I know personally who've had multi-million-dollar businesses, and then it all becomes about how great they are. And then, okay, now you got nothing left.
That's the slippery slope, because your worth gets attached to an external achievement. And then it's also the anxiety that happens underneath the surface. And that's where tapping can come in, right? It's like the anxiety that comes of maintaining that level of success or one-upping yourself when maybe your body is burnt out or your family is struggling because you've given all your time to your business. And there's a better way, there's an easier way, but it's a humbling, humbling journey to get there.
So humbling. I'd say entrepreneurship is one of the most humbling experiences, because when you think you're killing it, watch out.
Gonna change.
So it could be an equalizing move there that's waiting to happen, right? It's all happening for our greatest growth, right? Our greatest evolution, our greatest prosperity. So one thing I love is you talk about wildly wealthy women, which I adore that phrase. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so the wildly wealthy woman concept came to me when I was a single mom, newly single mom, sitting in my house, listening to a lot of Joe Dispenza and tapping on myself regularly. And I heard him say in one of his trainings, I want you to close your eyes and imagine your future self. And he was like, treat your body kind of like a pet, like sit, stay, don't open your eyes, don't touch your phone, close your eyes and connect to who you see yourself becoming, and do not open your eyes until you feel the frequency of it. And so what I did is I did that, but I actually tapped at the same time. So I just tapped on my finger points, which is a great way of tapping subtly. And it put me into this meditative state where I started to connect to my future self. I could see what she was wearing. I could see what she was driving. I could feel the difference in her frequency than where I was at that moment. And I started just doing that regularly. I just literally tapping into my future self. And I called her my wildly wealthy woman. And I started to make decisions about what I was wearing. Like, what would my wildly wealthy woman wear? I'd start to dress like her. How would my wildly wealthy woman approach this conversation? I started to embody her more and more with tapping. And I was manifesting insane things. Like one year I manifested 4 trips to Mexico in 1 year. You were on one of those trips with me. I had lots of fun on that trip. And I was manifesting money, opportunities, men, like all sorts of fun things. And it was all through this tapping practice of tapping into my wildly wealthy woman. And over time, she's matured, right? I've attracted the love of my life. I've built a much more stable business than where I was at then. But yeah, to me, your wildly wealthy woman is who you see yourself becoming. But it's teaching your body what it feels like to be her with tapping is the key for me to becoming her.
Yeah, I love that. And this past summer, I was on a yacht in Croatia. And I remember we were pulling into this little island, and I was standing at the top deck, the sun deck, and I'm looking out, and there's like yachts as far as the eye can see. And I like did my little tapping. I'm like, the universe is so abundant, is like, this is just evidence. And I'm like, this is the most crazy, awesome thing ever. And I started tapping because I found myself saying, this is unbelievable. And life can't get any better than this. And then I was like, whoa, whoa, hang on. What do you mean? And I'm like, okay, just like, okay, life is great and it can get better.
Saying, how can it get better than this? That was something taught in my tapping certification, was ask, how can it get any better than this?
Oh, that's so good. There you go. That's a gold nugget for anybody who wants to uplevel their tapping game. That's awesome.
Because the brain will start to show you, if you ask, how does it get any better than this? Well, it's like, well, let me go look for it, right? That's the reticular activator. It's like, well, this could happen and that could happen. Great. How can it get better than this? I love that you caught yourself, because look at your life now. You just got home from Kenya. Like, it did get better for you.
I totally got better. And like that trip was like 100 times better than Croatia. And I didn't even think it could get any better than Croatia. And it was hilarious. Like I'm floating around in the Adriatic Sea and without doing anything. There's a gal on the trip and we're on these little donut things and she's floating beside me and we're chatting and all of a sudden she's like, I need a bookkeeper. Can you help me? I'm like, I just got a client. Now I'm writing off the trip because I got a client. And I'm just like, this is awesome. Like, how does this show up in your life? It's amazing.
I call that tapping into magic, which is another training that I do. But, there's a certain, when you're living in the magic and when you're not, and life gives you that feedback, right? Like one time I remember, I've been pretty good at living in the magic because I spend a lot of time maintaining my emotional state. But a year and a half ago, I remember one day I was walking into the mall with my daughter and there was these two men standing outside that kind of looked at us weird. And then this woman walked in behind me and she's like, hey, you need to keep your eye out because those guys were watching you. And I told them where to go. Like, she told them off, but you need to like watch your back, sort of thing. And earlier that day I had went through a bunch of issues with my truck. And I remember it was like the universe was stopping me and saying, like, you need to realign your energy. You are not living in the magic right now. And it's just like that contrast, right? When you're living in the magic, you're floating in the sea, a new client floats up to you, versus when you're not and you're starting to get feedback from the universe that things maybe need a bit of adjustment.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, and I love the idea of living in the magic. Now I'm like, how can I live in the magic more? Where's my magic? I need more. I need more of that. So one of the things I was sharing with you is you and as I said, it's not our first rodeo with entrepreneurship, but it's also not our first rodeo with all the different kind of spirituality or woo-woo things, all the stuff. You and I have been down a lot of different rabbit holes of things. And along the way, as probably all of our listeners, have heard this concept of masculine and feminine energy. And I know I have lived probably my whole life or the majority of my life in masculine energy. And I understand now that comes from having to have my own back. And like, I didn't have anybody to relax into and lean on from a young age all the way up to I'm in my 50s now, right? But recently I've got a taste of that feminine energy where I can relax. And now it's like a drug, like I'm addicted. I'm like, how do I get more of that going on? And how do I put more of that into my business and into my family even? And is there anything that comes up for you around that you would want to share? And even involving like how we can even tap into that with EFT?
Yeah, I actually did a session on myself this morning, a tapping session on myself this morning, because I noticed I was sitting down to do a bit of meditation and there was this part of me that just didn't want to focus. It was like, you have work to do, you have things to do. Like, so one of the things that I teach in my type of tapping that's a bit different is parts of self-work. So if you have that natural, ambitious driver, get things done part of you, what I did this morning was I just closed my eyes and I asked, like, where does this part of me live in my body? Like, where do I feel her? And for me, I could really feel her in my chest. And it was a little bit of anxiety because she wants to get going. She wants to get things done. She doesn't want to be left behind. She doesn't want to stop. She's used to doing it all herself. So I actually just tapped and I talked to that part of myself. I was like, what is it that you need? And what I saw was like this part of me that was carrying all the bags. It's like the workhorse. Like she's just used to carrying all the stuff and powering forward and getting things done. But I could see like you're carrying too much stuff. Like you need to stop and have a water break. Like take a minute. And when I start, it's cool when you can tap with different parts of yourself because it's like creating an inner dialogue. And as I tapped and talked to her, she said she couldn't stop. And when I asked her why, she said, because if I stop, I'm afraid that I'll lose everything I worked so hard for.
Oh, I feel that like that hits me like a ton of bricks.
Right? And that's the power of connecting to our body because our body will show us what's in our subconscious brain. So my body showing up with this little bit of anxiety in my chest was showing me there's a part of myself that's really pushing right now. And she's carrying all the stuff on her back. And it's almost reminded me of like, you know, when they're pioneering in the founding days.
It's like the gold rush times. Well, and that's part of where you and I live, right? But it's like the donkey with the things on it, all this stuff on it. Right?
Exactly. That's the image I got. There's part of me that was just like forging through the snow with all this stuff on her back. And when you tap with a part of self, you can get some observation. So I said, you know, like, what is it that you're carrying? And she's like, well, I'm carrying a tent and I'm carrying all this stuff, everyone else's stuff. And when she started to tap on it and through it, she was like, wait, half the stuff isn't mine. This is actually from my old life and I'm creating a new life. Like, I don't need it. So I saw her start to let that stuff go, like letting all the stuff she was carrying from her old life go. And it was cool because then the body responds. The anxiety lowered in my chest. All of a sudden, she's feeling lighter. And the cool thing with tapping with this part of myself is not that we're trying to change her. I love the part of me that has drive and ambition and can get things done, but she needs to function in a better way, right? She doesn't need to carry everyone's stuff and do it all on her own. And when she started to let all that stuff go, all of a sudden she could pick her head up and look around and was like, wow, this is actually really beautiful where I'm at in this journey. You know, whether it's like in this visualization, she was in the mountains and it was like, oh, I can have some water. And then continue to move forward in a healthier way. So for me, you know, that's just one example. Tapping is so dynamic and it's very creative. We use a lot of visualizations, but if you're wanting to step more into your feminine, really look at the part of you that is resisting that. And that could be your inner ambitious, driven self that has been the thing that's kept you alive, that's kept you in survival, that's helped you build what you've built. But just helping her function in a new way so that that inner feminine can step up and start, you know, receiving from that more creative place.
Oh my God, I love that. Because like one of the things I learned in my business is that like similar to that, like I don't want to lose what I've built. I've been playing defense, not offense. And so I'm in a mastermind and that was one of the questions that we had to consider for about like 3 hours. Just sit with, are you playing defense or are you playing offense? And how is that showing up? And at first I'm like, no, I'm totally offense. And then I'm like, no, you're not. You're just scared of losing what you've created. You've created a 7-figure business and you're scared of losing it. And then I'm like, well, why? What does that matter? Like, what does number of zeros matter? Isn't it how I'm experiencing my life? Like, does it matter if I'm a one-man show that takes home 100K or 200K? Or right now I've got 20 team members and all these zeros at the end of our revenue. But like in this economy, there's not a lot of room for profit and paying myself. So it caused me to look at that kind of like defense versus offense. And what am I carrying along with me that actually isn't mine to carry? And I realized that a lot of it was not wanting to disappoint team members.
Interesting. Why do you think that is? What are you afraid will happen if you disappoint a team member?
I think it's like this idea of I've given somebody a job and now they support their family with that job. And if there's a downturn in business and I need to let them go, somehow that means something about me, not just what it is. There's not enough work for you kind of thing. Means I'm a failure, or maybe I suck as a boss, or, you know, whatever. This shouldn't be happening. And I know anytime I say should, it's like red flag, right? Like, why shouldn't it? Like, why is that? Right. And so, Yeah, it's just really caused me that one question of, am I playing defense or offense? And what does that look like? And if I were to be shifting to offense, what does that look like? And that actually, this was in May. We had this mastermind, in-person mastermind, and we were like put in this room and said, think about this for 3 hours. And I'm like, this is like torture to me. But I realized, okay, I have been playing defense in my whole life with my kids, in my relationships, with my friendships. I don't want to rock the boat. Like, I've got a few key friends. I don't necessarily need new ones, but I don't want to risk the ones I do have. But that means I'm not showing up as my full self. Same with leading my team, probably with my kids and stuff. And I do believe this entrepreneurship it's like this reflection of your entire life. Whatever's going on in your business is going on other places in your life. And so I kind of use that time to look at the whole thing and my health as well. So then, understanding that, I asked, like, what would playing offense look like? And it's scary because it's not just carrying on doing the same thing.
You have to release to receive. You have to let go of what you're doing.
Yeah. So that's where I was like, okay, well, I'm building this team. They can run this part of the business. It's all good. And there's a slight pivot. It's not like a 180 pivot, or it's not even a 90-degree pivot. It's a slight pivot, but it's scary.
Yeah. And it's like, if that's where the body comes in, like you can physically feel it in your body, like that eek moment, like in your chest, or like, oh, can I trust this? And it is so true. Like you said, business will put a magnifying glass on all these other areas of your life. And that's the thing. There's no roadmap that's like, do this exact thing. It takes a level of unconventional, like you have to be a little unconventional in order to be like, okay, we were doing this, now we're going to do that. And trusting the guidance that's coming through, building the system, managing the disappointment. It's like not a walk in the park, but then who you become in that process is absolutely phenomenal. And it's not just the money you've made, but the person you've built within you and the impact you've made along the way. And that's so you, Michelle. Like, you have impacted so many lives, whether it's, through what you teach, through working with you personally, through being a friend. And it's like, you just got to keep going where you're guided, going into what's next, wherever the economy's at, wherever the people are at, that constant pivot and innovation.
Yeah. And that's one thing I've learned from you, right? Is like just what you said, go where you're guided next, right? Like, be willing to adjust. You and I talked about this recently, today even. Okay, so maybe right now it's harder for people to drop 30K to work with you. What else is available that we can offer them?
And it reminds me of, I have a mastermind called Millionaire in the Making Mastermind, where we study millionaires. And one of the things you'll hear a lot is people say, oh, I've made millions and I've lost millions. And it kind of reminded me of what you were saying, like, you've made millions of dollars in a certain way, and that it's okay if you're making money and losing money. It is part of the process. It's all feedback. And that each time you're getting closer to, okay, well, like you said, maybe $100,000 business with no team is what I want. Or maybe I do want this business. It just needs some adjustments. And finding what that is for you, like I said, there's no like map, like this is what it is for you. You have to build it as you go, and trust that.
Yeah, so good. So good. And then, of course, there's all the other things in our lives that make it so worthwhile, right? Our relationships, our friendships, our experiences, all of that. And I know that you've grown exponentially in that area.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. I mean, I started off as a single mom with a vision, and you were a big part of helping me build what I built, and bringing this to the world and building a multiple six-figure business that it was once just a dream for me. And so, yeah, I thank you for walking this journey with me continually, and like being a best friend and a guide.
Yay! Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm incredibly grateful. I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. My big takeaway was the concept of a wildly wealthy woman. Now, This is not new to me because I have been friends with Jackie for what feels like a gazillion years. Is not, it's about 8. But I really loved how Jackie shared that following an eye-opening meditation and tapping session, she discovered her wildly wealthy woman, a future version of herself that embodied everything she hoped to become. I love that for myself. When Jackie introduced me to this concept of a wildly wealthy woman, I was like, who is my wildly wealthy woman? And today, about 5 years later, I feel like I'm living my wildly wealthy life, and I am embodying my wildly wealthy woman. What I really loved was the inspiration Jackie found by studying and emulating women that she looked up to. We can kick that competition to the curb and take inspiration for women who are one step above us, or maybe 10 steps above us, and then act as inspiration for those who are maybe a couple of steps behind us. Now, don't forget, a new episode drops every Thursday, so make sure you follow the podcast, click that follow button on your favorite app, and get notifications so that you never miss an episode. And if you haven't downloaded your Rich Life Revolution workbook, be sure to do that, because there's some gold in that piece of material. And you will not want to miss next week's episode, The Dumpster Fire, where I share with you what I thought was my dumpster fire of a year, and I pull back the curtain on all of the crap and all of the garbage that made up that dumpster fire of a year. This is a good one. You will not want to miss this. Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you got at least one gold nugget today. Be sure to grab your copy of the Rich Life Revolution workbook to help you set the foundation for your next level of wealthy. Get it now at richliferevolution.ca, and I'll see you later.